G'day humans, welcome to the safe space for dangerous ideas. Well, how was that debate? The old Kamala Trump debate. How was that? I'm asking you a serious question because I didn't see it. Because I'm recording this in advance of the debate so that I can turn it around and get it into your ear holes as swiftly as possible. I'm very much looking forward to it. Chaz Licciardello, my interlocutor here, my brains trust, if you will, has for the past 4 US election cycles hosted a smash hit primetime national television show in Australia called Planet America, which dissects American politics. It's satirical, it's smart, it's whimsical. He's the perfect person to gaze from afar at the United States, both an insider and an outsider to the US political system. Enjoy as much as I'm sure that I did, but I don't know for sure because I haven't done it yet. This chat with the one and only Chaz Licciardello. All right. What did you make of it?
Look, I think with debates, people like to go, who won?
Okay, sorry, let me start again.
Debate.
Who won?
Yeah. There hasn't been a real debate with a winner or a loser, probably in the entire history of political debates. So the way I approach these
Wait a second. We literally just had one a couple of months ago, which upended the entire race.
Well, look, I'm not saying that there can't be people who fail in debates.
Oh, okay.
What I'm saying, but for instance, that last debate's a great example. That last debate, we had 2 losers, but one of them was the biggest loser of all time, which is why he had to withdraw from the race.
One of them wasn't even playing the debate game or the being alive game, right? Like there were 2 losers, but one, it's like one didn't even show up.
Exactly.
I mean, it's fun. Just to preface our hot takes on this particular debate, I had always been I've been one of those nincompoops who always wanders around after a debate saying, well, everybody knows debates matter. If debates mattered, then Mitt Romney would be president because he beat Obama in the first debate. Ho, ho. And then this year I was well and truly convinced that, that's obvious bullshit. Debates can totally matter since they just derailed a president's political career. That being said, take today's debate.
I was going to say that if you're of the view that all that matters is polling, then debates don't matter much because they rarely affect polling much. But I'm of the view that polling is not everything. I'm of the view that
hot take.
Yes, I'm of the view that you are trying to build a message for an entire campaign, and you might. For a little while, it might take you a little while to build it, but in the long run, it'll be worth it. So in this case here, I think that if we're looking what the candidates were trying to do and how well they succeeded in doing it, I would say that Kamala Harris would be happier with the outcome of this debate than Donald Trump would be, because this debate, as far as I'm concerned, was entirely about defining Kamala Harris. Like at this point in time, in the New York Times Siena poll that just came out, a third of the people there said they didn't know enough about Kamala Harris. Something tells me everyone knows what they need to know about Donald Trump, right? Whereas with Kamala Harris, they're not sure yet. And so at this point in time, they're still trying to work her out. And this debate, I think, was important for working her out because she's made it important.
What do you think they walked away from this debate having worked out about her?
I think the first thing is the attack that Trump's been using, that she's an idiot, I don't think is going to work. I think that she held her own. She didn't look vapid. She didn't look out of her depth. She didn't look like she was struggling. So I think that has tamped down that particular attack. It's made it less effective, I would say, number one. Number two, I think that the second attack on her has been about a lack of policy acumen, and the fact that she's hiding, that she's not doing interviews, that she hasn't released any information. I feel like if there was one phrase I remember hearing over and over again during this debate, it's Kamala Harris saying, I have a plan. She just kept on, as many times she could possibly say, I have a plan, she said it. And that was obviously intentional. And I think it probably would have helped her. Now, I come from the school that I'd like to hear the plan rather than just to hear you say you have one. But American viewers might be more forgiving than me.
Well, also, I mean, hopefully a plan is too complicated to be able to explain in the 1-minute rebuttal that you've got, right? I mean, in fact, remind me of probably the most embarrassing moment in the debate, I thought, was when the moderators tried to pin Trump down on what his healthcare plan was. And he didn't even have the bullshit, the normal Trumpian bullshit of just saying, I've got a great plan. It's the best plan. Everyone says it's the best plan. All the healthcare experts say it's the best plan and then move on. He literally admitted to not having a plan. Like a concept of a plan.
Yes. That was embarrassing. Although I
mean,
also thought,
yeah.
No, I was going to say, I thought an embarrassing moment for Trump, but much less overtly embarrassing. It's more subtly embarrassing if you're following what's going on. Was that there was a point when Kamala Harris, I thought, set him up for the biggest alley-oop spike of all time to confuse two sports, where they're talking about abortion, right? And that is obviously her turf, and she was just accusing Trump of wanting to bring in every possible restriction known to man. Just firing him up one after another.
He's going to like ban IVF, supposedly, according to Kamala Harris.
That was the one I was working to.
Right,
yeah, her final one was he's going to ban IVF. And when she said that, I thought, oh my God, you idiot. You're setting him up because he's got a policy he just announced last week for free IVF. And he wasn't even going to bring that up until you idiot, Kamala Harris, set him up for it. He's now going to spend the next minute talking about free IVF, which is going to make you look terrible because they're going to say,
what you weren't banking on is that there was an even bigger idiot in the room than Kamala Harris.
Exactly.
Namely,
I reckon
the former
Trump
president
forgot his own policy.
Forgot that he had a policy on it.
Yes.
It's so true. Because then he went on to say, didn't he, that J.D. Vance is a different man from him and they have different ideas about IVF because J.D. Vance said something bad about IVF.
He said that J.D. Vance had a different idea about him. I think about was it about IVF? I thought it was about the childcare policy. Not the childcare, the child tax credit. I don't remember. But my point is, he didn't say his policy, right? Yeah, and that to me is the most embarrassing part of the debate, but subtly embarrassing because most people wouldn't realize that. But if you know that's his policy, you go, my God, how did you miss that?
I'm not sure that I've been surprised in the hours since the debate to read the initial hot take as being that it's pretty much a slam dunk for Kamala and was terrible for Trump. Because within 30 seconds of the debate starting, I was like, oh, okay, I get what Kamala is going for here, and I'm not crazy about it, actually. Just in the sense, I take your point that what she needed to do was to make sure that any presumption that she might be lightweight was shot down. But I actually don't think that anyone who might vote for her believes the Trump line that she's a lightweight. Like, anyone who knows anything about her knows that she was a tough prosecutor and that she's smart. What they're worried about is that, I think, is that she's canned and too savvy and too clever for her own good and too poll tested and doesn't have a core and doesn't have a center that in the primaries in 2020 she's willing to say whatever she needed to do to pander to the woke left, and then all of a sudden now she's a tough guy prosecutor, and is she or isn't she tough on the border, and you don't know what you're going to get, that she's like an empty vessel, and that Trump at least has a core even if you don't like it. And I don't think she actually did us very many favors tonight, because I did sense, let's listen to the very first question right out of the gate, okay? She gets asked about whether or not people are better or worse off than they were 4 years ago.
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time.
She's already getting into numbers and $6,000. Like, this is your open moment to like be relatable, to be non-canned, and you're straight out of the gate with what is obviously a rehearsed speech that has nothing to do with the question. Like, pass me the Ambien.
Look, I agree that first answer was one of her worst. I think there were probably two moments when I thought generally, I think almost everything she said was rehearsed, but I think generally speaking, she matched the rehearsed soundbite quite well to the question. But I thought that first one, she did a terrible job of it. And the other time when she had no idea what she was doing was when
that's
Trump
such a low bar, Chaz. It's like, it's ridiculous. I mean,
Josh,
she's got 15 pre-rehearsed 2-minute speeches, and all she has to do is like mentally try to allocate like some game of like Jenga or Tetris, the correct answer to the correct question. How depressing.
Josh, after the last, 6 years or so of American politics, we are about 300 feet below the ground looking up at the limbo bar. I'll take a low bar. I really will take a low bar.
Touche. Okay. So, but then, and what was the other one that was too canned?
The other moment when I thought she just didn't know how to deal with what she was thrown at was when Trump essentially accused her of being the reason for the Ukraine war. She clearly had nothing prepared for that at all. And she was that was the first time and the only time during that debate we got an authentic Kamala Harris word salad of just stuff all over the place. Where she was reaching for sound bites everywhere, had no idea how to combine them. It was just, the circuits were all frazzled in the brain.
Yeah.
It was, the whole machine was breaking down. That was the only other time.
I do find it really hard to know how to even navigate this race. I mean, as you guys do it on Planet America from week to week, how do you do? I mean, the fundamental conundrum here is that you have one candidate who I believe should not even, who is obviously not playing the game, is proud of not playing the game. By game, I don't mean a cynical political game. I mean the fundamental basic game of politics, of like respecting democratic institutions and, being willing to be a gracious loser and, and fight in the spirit of what is for the country rather than just spinning whatever bullshit you have to get your accrete as much power to yourself as possible. And so it's very hard to, in moments like this, to be like, oh, who won this and who lost that and who's ahead here and who's behind here and like what is this particular policy and that particular policy, because you're dealing with someone who fundamentally has no interest in governance, didn't really like being the leader of a government first time. He liked being the head of state, but didn't really like running the government, isn't really interested in anything apart from his own narcissism, and certainly doesn't have a commitment to the grander polity or the grand arc of American interests. So like, are we just kind of like arguing about the color of the house that we're going to build on the far side of the moon when we're like, is it fairies on the head of a pin? Like, how do you do it?
Look, I agree that the current rules do not apply and we shouldn't pretend that they do. And so for that reason, when I'm trying to work out what's going on here, I'm not applying all the usual cliches. For me, this is a really simple situation actually, which is that about 55% of America 55% voting America don't want Trump to come back. That is where they are at. They need to decide whether they can accept Kamala Harris. If they can accept Kamala Harris, she's going to win the election. If they can't accept Kamala Harris, she can't get 48 or 49% of the voting public accepting her, then Trump's coming back because he's got 45 in the bag. They're not going away. And so it's for me, it's very simple. And this is why I'm kind of describing everything in terms of Kamala Harris, because I think she is really all that matters. I think Trump is a constant and the variable is Kamala Harris.
Right. But I mean, it also depends where those people are, right? I mean, it's almost certain that she is going to get considerably more votes than he will. Like if it was just a purely a majority contest, then we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We'd just be like, well, of course she's going to win.
Sure.
Yeah. It's fucking ridiculous. But yes, which towns in Pennsylvania and fucking Ohio are gonna, go for Kamala?
Actually, let me put one more thing to you, though. There's one other interesting aspect of this, because what you say about Trump is absolutely right. He does not play the game of democracy as we thought it was to be played. But Kamala Harris, she's not playing another game, a different game, a much less worrying game. But but at the same time, she's not doing the media thing at all. This is new.
Yeah.
Like she is basically just flicking off the entire mainstream media, and she is only interacting with influencers, and she's only releasing the policies that she feels she needs to release, which are the most poll tested policies that she thinks can back that she can back. And in the past, she would not have gotten away with it, but maybe politics is changing. So that, number one, now this particular election, she's up against Trump, so that's a bit different. But maybe in 8 years' time, we're going to look back and go, Kamala Harris's campaign was the first campaign of the new way of doing politics. And I don't know if that's a better way or if it's a worse way, but it's a different way.
I mean, why would it not just be part of the ordinary oscillation between audacity and caution, in the sense that much like what we saw at the last election in Australia, where the election before last in Australia, the opposition centre-left party came to the table with a huge suite of very ambitious progressive policies and lost on losable elections. So then at the next election, the subsequent opposition leader came in with basically no policy, just said, I'm not the other guy, and he won the election. Similarly, can't a case be made that, there's a moment when you want an Obama coming in there with, like, we're going to overhaul the entire healthcare system and as our chance, and yes, we can. And then there are other moments where you just want to kind of play small ball. So all we want is the other guy not to win, so don't give anyone any reason not to like us. Just vote for us because we're not him.
Look, there may be an element of that, and I think you speak reason there, that there are times for the big ball, times for the small ball. But I would argue that the small ball that Kamala Harris is playing is different to the small ball that Joe Biden played, or that previous small ball politicians have played.
In what way?
In the way that she is exhibiting, she has complete control over her campaign. She has eliminated anything which she doesn't have any complete control over. She's only releasing exactly the words that she once released. When she's only conducting interviews where she has basically complete control of the situation. She's only putting herself in places that she controls. That has never happened before, and it's something you couldn't do before.
Do you mean basically that she's not doing unexpected town halls with questions from the audience, and she's not sitting down with the New York Times for a one-on-one? Because is there any other way in which she's exerting unusual control?
Well, I think the policies as well. I think she's released one-line policies. That is new for a Democrat. The Democrats did not used to do that. Yeah. Like, Republicans have done that before. Democrats have never done that before. And it's not just her. Tim Walz as well. His entire persona until he became the vice presidential nominee for the Democrats was being loquacious, being a guy who likes to chat, and they've just tamped him down.
Heard someone say.
Totally. Yeah. I'll tell you what else. This is the first time. This is the first. The other thing is, this is the first for is no local media. They're not even doing local media. That is something that is very rare, especially when you're competing in Pennsylvania. Like, they're not doing that at all. Now, I want to be clear here. I'm not trashing that at all. I think there's good reason for this. I think that I think that you couldn't do this in the past. This is something where they have new capabilities that they couldn't have in the past. But what I'm saying is, this may be, maybe looking back on this, we might say in the future that things have changed permanently, and it's not just oscillations, but that things have changed for good, and things for
permanently rather than for the perhaps
positively, yeah. And
I mean, it's interesting. That is interesting. Look, we're not going to know until after the election whether or not you know in the middle of a campaign whether or not the thing that you're doing in the campaign is good. I agree argue that Trump comes in as such a known quantity that there was very little downside actually for him in this debate, I think, because as long as he didn't, seem completely unhinged, which I don't think he did, no more than usual. Anyone who was going to vote for him anyway understands that he's an idiosyncratic guy with a lot of ridiculous claims, and they've baked that into their calculations. For her, I can't quite tell. My instinct, my gut is that she could have been better off leaning more into the Tim Walz, these guys are weird, you kind of hack Donald angle, instead of, like, she was a very robotic, generic Democrat who I felt like didn't necessarily, like, let me play one. Here's one answer that she gave. Here's one exchange in which Donald Trump is invited to remark by moderators on some of the comments that he's made about her race. And listen to Kamala's response.
Yeah.
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking...
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race.
I think that was a perfect opportunity for her to say, look, I really couldn't care less. This is the kind of thing that he does all the time. And like literally just leave it at that, and not even say, and just be like, this guy has his funny like obsessions and quirks, whatever. But like to say like, I believe that it's a tragedy that I mean, come on, you're just taking his bait. That's what he wants you to say.
I mean, I know what you're saying. Like that, she did that with Dana Bash in the interview there, just said, move on, I don't care, same old plain book. Like she could do that, and certainly that would be effective. I'm not saying that wouldn't be effective, but I understand why she did what she did there. What she was trying to do was she was trying to signal to all the nervous middle-class white people in middle America, I don't care about race. I care about being a dickhead. That's what that answer, the extended answer was about, where she was going through all of Donald Trump's foibles through his history. She went through his entire history of racial animus. And on none of them was she going, oh, and that's awful because he's a racist. She was saying he did that, which was being a dickhead.
Really? I didn't take that. No, I took it as being he's a racist because 40 years ago he, was on the wrong side of the Central Park Five, and he's a racist because he's questioning. Like, she doesn't have to use the words, but the mere fact that she's saying that it's a tragedy, that like it is not a tragedy. It is simply not a tragedy that he thinks that it's weird that half black, half Indian, like quarter white person is their race differently in front of different crowds. Like he's right that he does do that. He's wrong that there's anything wrong with that if what he's saying. But it's not a big deal that he does that, and it's not a big deal in 2024 that 40 years ago he was making like, I don't know, criticisms of black crime in New York that code in 2024 as being unseemly.
See, okay, look, I mean, this is one where we can disagree. That's fine. But what I would say is, I mean, that was Trump's response. Trump's response was she's talking about things that were 40 years ago because she can't talk about things that are happening now, which I thought was actually one of his better responses to off the cuff. But I think that when she's talking about Trump not renting to black people in 40 years ago, the reason why she's doing that is because she's saying, look, I'm not someone who cares about pronouns and cares about the little minor irritations that people are talking about now with race. I'm talking about full on being an asshole, discriminating against people in a big, massive way.
I see what you're saying. I think if that's what she was doing, then she should by half. Because if I missed it, then your average American voter will have missed it. Like the invitation is, is basically, do you want to make a big deal out of the fact that Donald Trump is not politically correct enough? And the correct answer should be, no, I do not. The correct answer should not be, I do want to, and here's why, because actually it's not just a matter of optics. There's also substance here. Because in 1992, he owned an apartment block that was mean to people of color, and therefore, you've already, when you're explaining, you're losing.
That's fair enough. Like I said, I don't think you're being illogical here. I think what you're saying is correct, but I also think there are two ways to skin a cat. And let's remember as well where this ended. This ended with her saying, I just think it's really sad that we got someone here who's just constantly trying to divide people. I just think we need to turn the page. Like this was leading towards her reinforcing her message, which is we need new leadership. We need a new generation. Like she basically took the question, the race question, and turned it into her campaign message, which is what she tried to do with every question, which is a smart way to approach this.
I suppose the campaign message was like if you could just turn up the volume a little bit on the hopey changiness of it and down a bit on the wonky I fight for you kind of hammy bullshit. There's just something about going back to that first answer, right? Her very first answer. If it's her first answer and she's going to say it regardless of what the question is, then make it about the fact that America is an idea, that America is something that the whole world can aspire to be part of, that or maybe you don't say the whole world because it brings in overtones of immigration or something, but basically try to just stick a needle in your arm and like a fentanyl addict, just inject us all with a bit of there is no red America or blue America, there is no black America or white America, there are only these United States of America. And what we had for 4 years under Trump was a chaotic and divided country. And are things perfect after the past 4 years? Absolutely not. Are there things that we need to improve on? Totally. But, let's not go back to the squabbles of the past. Let's turn a page. Like all of that stuff that you were kind of alluding to there, you did a better job than she did. Yeah. So I just want, give me more of that. Don't give me $6,000 in tax credits 30 seconds into the show.
Yeah. I actually think that's a really good call from you, that one of the strengths, I think conventions are overrated, but I think one of the strengths of the Democratic Convention was they really did patriotism well. They really, that was a real strong point where it wasn't mindless rah America patriotism. It was, we love America because we think what America stands for is great kind of patriotism. And she just completely lost that during this debate. She never that at all. Yeah, and I think you're right. A bit of that would have been handy.
And that's what why I thought the Tim Walz pick was great as well, because, there's the problem with the left for the past, 5 to 10 years, I think, is that it has gotten a little bit too smug about how much it can act on mainstream institutions and silly, middle American voters and unenlightened people who haven't got their university degrees in gender studies. There's a kind of elitism and a sort of finger-wagging puritanism and about it that is off-putting. And Tim Walz is the opposite of that. He's back to the, kind of loquacious, guy in an airport bar, working folks, and that, I think, that optimistic kind of patriotic vision of an everyman populist left is what will be able to defeat the far right and these weirdos, not some kind of scolding, censorious version of the left.
I think you're right, and I think that they have underutilized the aspect of him. I think Tim Walz reeks of what you're talking about and what the Democratic Party needs. And when he first came in, There are a few moments which were brilliant like that. His first speech was filled with that. And there were some times when he had conversations in the first week where he was introducing himself to the left, and he was full of that. It was wonderful. It was a breath of fresh air. But the last month, I've seen very little of that. And I don't blame him. I think that's part of that strategy I was talking about before. And so that's something they're not using as well. Can I just bring up, when we're talking about this debate, something which you haven't mentioned at all, and I would like to know your views on this, which is that I'm referring in particular about the moderating and about, I felt like Harris had the best of that debate, but I also felt like she had a lot of help. I felt like in terms of the topics that were picked, they didn't even mention Biden, which was, I think, that was the unspoken elephant in the corner. Like the fact there was the last time they had the debate, Biden was there and now he's not. And there's all these questions about Kamala Harris's relationship with him and what she knew and what she didn't.
What would you have asked?
If off the top of my head, I would say the question I would like to know, I would like to see her answer is what do you think if Joe Biden hadn't stepped aside, that he should still be the nominee?
That's good. Yes,
I would like to hear her to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I think what a lot of people would also like to know is how does she assess his capabilities? But I think that's too easy for their answer. I'd like to.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah. No, that's a good way of putting it, because if you put it any other way, if you say, like, when did you realize that he was no longer competent to run for president, then obviously she's just going to decline it and deny.
Exactly. But the fact they even go near Joe Biden, I thought was a real gift to her. The fact that they spent probably 2 minutes combined on her flip-flops was a real gift to her, because that is her weak point. Yeah. Whereas with Trump, they spent literally 10 minutes on January 6th and 2020. That was the biggest topic of the debate by a long way.
I actually thought that was correct when you asked what I thought, because of the point that I was making earlier about him not playing the game, like not abiding by the rules. I think it's important for a significant portion of the debate to be devoted to basically democracy and, like, are you going to abide by the outcome of this election? Do you agree with all of the judges and independent analysts who've looked at the last election and say that there was, that didn't win it? I think that was important to put on the table, even though it may have not won at all, because his supporters already, have already factored that in, and his opponents as well.
Just to be clear, I'm not saying that shouldn't come up. It's the most important thing with regards to Trump. I agree. It's got to come up. But I felt like it just went on and on and on, that section, to the point. In fact, it was the only follow-up. I think that was the only follow-up of the entire night, was them reiterating the question about January 6th. And it got to the point where Trump did something which I've never seen him do, ever. See, I'm not sure if you've seen him do this before. I've never seen him on the topic of the 2020 election go, let's stop talking about this. Why don't we talk about now? I've never seen him do that, ever.
That's true, actually. Yeah, that's true. I'm surprised he didn't get into it more. Since you mentioned the subject of Kamala's flip-flops and them going reasonably easy on her, let's have a listen to, or a look, if you're watching this on YouTube, which you should be, so you can see Chaz's beautiful face. If you're listening to the podcast version, let's have a listen to her answer to flip-flopping and changing her opinions and her policies is.
My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down. And name-calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
What do you reckon?
I mean, I know that the Americans do politics differently, but like the whole I intend to be that president and lifting up. Do you remember in the Republican primaries when Donald Trump was against, the clown car of different Republicans? At one point, Marco Rubio said that if you think that Obama doesn't know what he's doing, make no mistake, he knows exactly what he's doing. And then said a few other things, and then later said, if you think Obama doesn't know what he's doing, make no mistake, he knows exactly what he's doing. And Trump scored like the win of the night by being like, Marco's brain is broken or something. It's like he's a robot who's just
That was the one where Chris Christie ended him. Yeah, Chris Christie jumped in and just
did he? Was it Chris Christie? His brain was over there. And it's like these people get so prepared for these debates that they learn their zinger and then they seize up and they just keep spewing out the same zinger. Like Kamala just said, it's about lifting people up, not beating them down. Okay, it's an okay line. It's such an amazing line that you have to brand it into your memory and then squirt it out twice in 30 seconds. I don't know. I suppose she's trying to make a point that policies might change, but her fundamental values don't. Sounds canned to me.
Look, it's fine. She was just trying to escape. But all I'm saying is that doesn't explain why she's flip-flopped from everything from healthcare policy to plastic straws, right? That doesn't explain that. And
has she flip-flopped on plastic straws? Is that
she has. She now doesn't mind plastic straws. I'm not saying that's a big deal. I'm just saying that if ever there was room for a follow-up, that question had room for a follow-up.
Wait, is she now pro-plastic straw? She's on pro-plastic straw?
She's now not anti-plastic straws anymore.
That's
she
great.
Used to be anti-plastic straws.
My gal. In Australia, you can't drink a beverage anymore because your mouth dissolves in the paper straw because Australia outlawed plastic straws. It's the greatest thing about getting to America and getting off the plane and getting a beverage and being like the land of the free, the home of the brave. It truly is. God bless my plastic straw.
I want to emphasize I'm not complaining about that particular policy. I'm just saying she was trying to escape the question as fast as she could. And I feel like the moderators, if ever was a follow-up, that should have been the follow-up because she completely avoided it. And it's such a central part to the concerns about her.
Yeah. And again, I think there would be a way for her to be kind of, look, maybe I'm naive about the potential liabilities of being a female candidate, and maybe part of it I think it is, and she has to really play the role of this kind of tough, I am a president, and when I am your president, I will fight for you every day kind of nonsense. But I would find it more appealing if she was a little bit more playful about it and was like, listen, life is long and things show up in different ways over the course of a political career. I've worn a lot of hats in my life. I've been a mom, I've been a prosecutor, I've been a vice president, a president. On the big issues, I can't really say on the big issues I've stayed the same because even big issues like plastic straws, she's flip-flopped on. But the big issues, I've remained fundamentally the same. But of course you amend your opinions and you zig and you zag. All I can tell you is that I know exactly what I'm going to do for the next 4 years. And if you want to re-elect me after the end of the 4 years, then we'll have a conversation about what the subsequent 4 years look like. But you can say something like that, and at least you would sound more like a human than like, me be robot, me be president.
Absolutely. Don't say that. Don't do it like that, Kamala. I agree completely. And I think my values haven't changed is a fair place to start. I just don't think it's the whole answer. It's like, look, my values haven't changed. I've always been trying to achieve the same goals, but I came out of California where there were certain ways of achieving these goals. I've now been vice president for the last 4 years. I've learnt new tricks. I've learnt other ways to attain the same goals, which might be more politically achievevable. And like you can, as you say, you can address this like a normal person. I'm not saying this is the Achilles heel you can attack. I'm just saying that I felt like the moderators just flew past that section and then dwelt for ages on the January 6th section. And not just that, also the fact checking. Now, Trump said a lot of lies and they picked them up, and every lie they picked them up on was a lie. I'm not disputing any fact check, but it's not like Kamala Harris didn't say stuff that was dodgy at times. Her entire abortion section was accusing Trump of doing things that Trump has said he is not going to do. Like it's just from beginning to end.
Banning abortion, you mean?
Like banning everything. And the moderators were silent during that.
Why? Did she imply that he was going to ban other reproductive?
She was talking about incest and rape, and she was basically ascribing every red state restriction to Trump and saying this is what he's going to do, right? And that is just not his policy, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You can say you don't believe him. I'm just saying, if the moderator is going to call out, I'm going to draw a line here, I'm going to draw a line there. Every line they drew was against Trump. Every single one.
Right.
And it was usually just after he had a big zinger line, and then they just broke his momentum. And then that bit which you mentioned right at the top of this conversation, when they asked him about the healthcare, and he waffled like he always does, and then they said, "Oh, so you don't actually have a policy at all?" And he said, "I have a concept of a policy." So you don't have a policy at all, that's not a standard moderating question. That's them injecting themselves into the debate. They never did anything like that for Kamala Harris, and they could have, but they chose not to. So I actually felt like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, because the moderators Trump didn't do as well. I think that Trump had some problems, and I think Kamala Harris performed better, generally speaking, but I think that they didn't help.
I think you're right. I mean, it's obvious, and it also didn't help the sort of erosion of trust in the legacy media when the number one, television newscaster from the number one, nightly news program exhibits any kind of preference, even if it's just in the eye of the beholder. That's true. I mean, I found moderators to be a little bit like, I would just like a looser debate. I mean, it's just my style. I think you find out quite a lot about the American political system. The presidential like selection system is a terrible way to select the leader of the free world. It doesn't select for the best qualities that you want. I mean, in the president, you want a certain judiciousness and calmness and of hubris and contemplativeness and perhaps a sort of professorial reflectiveness, all of which are attributes that are not favored in a presidential race. So one of the things that I think is, one thing that you certainly don't need from a president is an ability to learn 15 2-minute speeches and then deliver them without seeming nervous in a canned television format. Like, there's no reason why that should be an important part of the job in the Oval Office. But what you might want to see is the way that the person wrestles with things in real time and throws ideas around and receives unexpected ideas and jabs and spars, kind of allowed. Like, maybe that's kind of like adjacent to the sort of thing that you want from the president. So when the moderators are quite strict about, this is the end of your time, your question has finished, I'm sorry, we're going to give equal time to the other person, like, let them interject a little, like, let them talk to each other a little, be a little bit more loosey-goosey, like, let's see where this goes. It's more interesting and it's probably more useful.
Can I tell you what I've always wanted to see in a debate? And it's never going to happen, but
mud wrestling.
Along the lines of what? No, not that. Along the lines of what you suggested before that last suggestion, what I've always wanted to see is case studies. Forget all the tell me about abortion type questions. Just going, okay, case study. You're the president and Putin does X.
Hypothetical, you mean?
Yeah, Putin does X and the Hungarian president says Y and the House of Representatives does Z. What do you do? And then after they answer the first part, you go, and now the Senate has done Z. What do you do?
I like it.
I would like to see that.
Yes, that's a very good idea. They should get John Dickerson to do a debate like that. He'd be good at that. From CBS News. He's good at that sort of stuff.
It'd be
nice.
Kind
of, like thought experiments and things.
Just because it's not about the exact scenario. It's just about seeing the way they think. And that would tell you how they think.
Yes, yes, that's right. Just before we leave the question of Kamala Harris flip-flops, I would love it if a presidential candidate would just be a bit more honest about the way that the presidency gets won in terms of primaries and so on. Like, wouldn't it be lovely if she just leveled with us and was like, what's the moderator's name, Dan or David? If she was just David, I was running for a primary in the Democratic Party from the state of California. What did you think I was going to, what policy suite did you think I was going to take on? We know how this goes. We know how this game has to be played. Does that mean that I don't have convictions? Of course not. It means that I also want to win. That would be. Would that face?
Look, I'd love to see that. I'm not sure if it'd be successful or not, but I'll tell you some evidence that it might be successful, because there's only one candidate I've ever seen in history who would even consider doing something like that, and it's Donald Trump. And he won the primary doing that. So
It's true.
I mean, So maybe it'll be good to see that kind of thing. I don't think Kamala Harris as the politician is going to do it, but maybe seeing a bit more of that kind of thing might work.
You're not entirely right that the only person who that thing was Donald Trump, because you just reminded me of a moment in Obama's memoir of his time in the White House, or the first section of the memoir. He's apparently still writing the second, which is a great memoir, where he talks about being in the back of his limo going to, I think it's meet the press, and there's lots of speculation about whether he's going to run for president. I guess it must be 2006, I suppose. And he is in the back car, I think David Axelrod, and they're working out what his response will be in a question of, are you going to run? Because he's there to talk about something else, but they know that the interview is going to end with, are you going to run? And they're workshopping the different ways of doing that question. And Obama just turns to Axelrod and says, what if I don't dodge it? And he was like, well, you can't announce now. And he's like, no, not announce. What if I tell the truth? What if I just say, I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure yet. And they're like, well, you don't really do that. And he's like, let's give it a shot. And he did it. Yeah. Skyfall in, he actually ended up winning the presidency, you may recall. So yes, that's kind of like what I'm talking about. Like you don't actually have to play the game. You can also just say the thing that we all know to be true, and that we know that you know is true, and that we know that you know is true.
Okay, third term of Obama. I'm sure it's a winner.
Wouldn't that be nice? I want to take a listen to the final clip, which is Donald Trump getting a little bit. I mean, this for me is Trump at his best, or the craziest, but it's what he does the best and makes Trump Trump. Have a listen.
I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
Waking up Joe Biden at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to go and do something that he would be able to do just by signing his name to a piece of paper without worrying about Congress. Vintage Trump.
That was. And look, and that whole argument of, why don't you just do something rather than saying you're going to do it? Why don't you just do it? You're the vice president. Now, I know she's a vice president, not the president, but it's an effective technique.
It's also total bullshit and completely cynical, because of kinds of things. I mean, like, additionally infuriating because he strong-armed the Republican Party into voting against a bill that actually would achieve almost all of what they're talking about there, but he wanted to have this as an issue to run on, so he persuaded the Republicans not to pass the bill, because he wants this to be an open wound that he can campaign on. So totally cynical and really quite fictitious, because he keeps, I mean, even in that rant, he's moving his words up all over the place. He's saying, they don't need a bill. Why don't they just sign a bill? It wouldn't be a bill they would sign. It'd be an executive order that they would sign, because it's not a bill unless it's through Congress, which is exactly the thing that he's saying that they don't need to do. But an executive order would not be comprehensive to achieve what he like. So, but as a piece of showmanship,
absolutely,
I think it's strong.
I agree. And by the way, just from a policy point of view, let's leave aside the showmanship aspect of it. There is actually an argument he could make, which is probably a little bit technical for a Donald Trump argument. He likes to make pretty broad arguments. But there is an argument he can make, which I think is quite solid ground, which the moderator hinted at with that question, which is, we heard for 3 years that you needed a bill to make any kind of change, but then you just turned around and signed an executive order with 3/4 of what I've been asking for all along. And look what happened. Overnight, the numbers went down. They could have gone down 3 years ago, but you kept on insisting that you couldn't do what you then turned around and did anyway. Like, that is, I think, a real vulnerability for Biden, not Kamala Harris. She's not the person signing the executive orders. But I think that's an argument that hasn't been made enough. I mean,
it is a liability for her, actually, because I don't think anybody thinks that she's going to be to the right of Joe Biden on immigration.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
True. And
they do
look,
come as a package on that.
And look, there is a response to that as well. If someone made that argument to me, my response to them would be, wait another 3 months till you see the courts throw that executive order out, because it's coming. It's going through the courts. It's going to be illegal. It's going to be found. But by the time, if you become president, again, that court order, that executive order will have been struck down.
We won't even have to wait till he becomes president, because half of the things he was talking about this evening were things that he claimed he was going to fix before he even became president. He wins the election.
That's right.
He was like, in the time between election day and inauguration day, he's going to have ended the war in Ukraine and ended the Gaza war, I think. Both of them.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny, actually. I mean, I don't think Kamala Harris would ever do this, but if Kamala Harris is Donald Trump, she might turn around and say, well, if you can do this before you're president, do it now.
Do it now. Just do it
now. Do it right now. Time's a wasting. Come on, let's march on down. Let's up, Joe Biden.
I'll come with you. Yeah, exactly. That's right. What did you make of? I mean, Vladimir Putin must be feeling pretty good tonight. Was pretty struck by how overt Donald Trump was in admitting that he's going to stab Ukraine in the back and in order to end the war, because he was invited at least twice, I think maybe even 3 times, by the moderators to say, do you want Ukraine, or will it be a requirement that Ukraine win the war? And he didn't just dodge the question. He said, no, I want the war to end. Which means at some significant calamity to Ukraine.
Yeah. Look, you're right. Zelensky would be nervous hearing that, but it's nothing that he didn't already know. Let's face it. It's actually, I found it odd. There was a few times that kind of thing happened with Trump, like where he was given an obvious angle to just go, no, or just to say, I'll give you what you want. Let's move on. I'm full of bullshit. I don't care. But he just wouldn't do it. Like, for instance, the other one was the national ban on abortion. Like saying, if Congress passed a national ban on abortion, would you veto it? That's right. That's the one where J.D. Vance, he said, I'm not J.D. Vance.
Right.
But they said J.D. Vance said you would veto the national ban on abortion. And he just wouldn't say, I'd veto it, which would be so easy for him to say. I don't know why.
But he may be savvier than you're giving him credit for, in that he may be thinking of response from the right. Like, he also wants people to turn out, right? He wants this to turn out. And he doesn't want everyone who has been banking on him, who's a religious conservative, to feel like he's stabbing them in the back. He can't say, I'm going to veto. He needs to play both sides of this. He needs, I think there would be a shitstorm on the J.D. Vance, on religious talk radio, for example, in Appalachia and the Midwest, and in J.D. Vance, if he said, I would veto a national abortion ban.
I don't know. I mean, maybe you're right. I reckon he's just got him. I reckon he can just be Bernie Sanders, and they're still going to vote for him. I reckon he's got him.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The most interesting thing on foreign policy, though, I thought, of the whole debate came from Kamala Harris. It was a really weird moment, and it was a prepared moment. It was a prepared moment because it was when he was talking about her being soft on China. And she said, oh yeah, how about that tweet that that you sent out to President Xi, President Xi, thank you, in the middle of COVID. Like, she quoted with a number of exclamation marks, like she's clearly prepared, right, with this tweet. And then she said, even though he had a complete lack of transparency from the origins of COVID, and you go, hang on, you're going after the people who say that COVID was a Chinese conspiracy. Is this what we're doing now? The Democrats are going after those people? I found that really interesting, that was a plan of hers.
I thought that was weird as well. I also thought it was weird to give him shit for doing diplomacy. Like, give him shit for being, mean and arrogant and bullying to other countries. But I don't think it's necessary to give him maybe she was trying to rile him up. Maybe this was a plan, like, by claiming that he's soft on China or something. But
I know why you're thinking that, because what you're thinking is logical. But if you have, I'm assuming you haven't read the DNC platform from the convention.
No.
Because if you had, you would have seen that there's a extremely worrying trend. I don't know who it's from. I don't know if it's from Kamala Harris or if it's from one of her people or whatever. Someone there doesn't like the traditional democratic method of foreign policy negotiation, because in the DNC platform, they went him hard on being too soft on Iran, which was very weird. Like, the Democrats were going Donald Trump for not being more saber-rattling with Iran. And when Iran...
He assassinated one of their senior leaders and pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. What do you want him to do?
I know. And they said that in the DNC platform, they were citing times when there were tensions with Iran, and they said, and you didn't attack them. You didn't do anything. And and it was like, hang on, this is weird. Like, is this John Bolton, or is this the Democratic Party?
So what is that play, do you think? What are they doing? What is that strategy?
I don't know. I can't think of a sector of, I mean, maybe the Never Trumpers, but the Never Trumpers aren't reading the Democratic platform.
No, I wonder whether, just spitballing here, I wonder whether it is, the thinking goes, Kamala Harris is a woman, women are perceived as weak on national security, we need to be the hawkiest version of the Democratic Party that we can be. Like, she has been talking a lot about, we want to have a formidable American military might and all this sort of stuff. And she's talking, she certainly hasn't pandered to the kind of, anti-Zionist wing of the party. She's been strong and bullish on Israel. So maybe it's all part of that. Try to just be hawks so that the kind of Republican-leaning soccer moms in the Midwest who don't really like Donald Trump but would generally have voted for, like, Mitt Romney, could vote for you.
Yeah, that could be the logic. I mean, it's certainly, all I'm saying is that I'm not surprised to see her go hawkish. Like, that is consistent. And that may be the reason why. Yeah.
How frightened are you of a Trump second term?
Look, let me take a step back to go back to the beginning of the first term, and then I'll answer your question.
Okay.
When Trump first was elected president, and there are all these doomsaying articles about the end of the world is nigh, and North Korea and World War III, and
the
all
Republic
this kind of stuff.
repeals itself was Andrew Sullivan's piece in the Atlantic.
Exactly, and about the end of democracy and all this kind of stuff. I wasn't worried about any of those things. What I was worried about, which I feel vindicated in now, was that Trump just lowers everyone's standards on everything. Like, Trump, the way he interacts with things, the way he interacts with politics, the way he interacts with policy, everything, the way he interacts with his opponents, the way he interacts with the media, all of them are the lowest possible standards. They're school kid level, and everyone else becomes like that around him.
Right.
He makes people who would have behaved in a more mature way behave like him, to respond to him. And we get this escalating devolution of standards as a result. And that was what I was worried about, and that is what I think has played out. I think it took about a month for CNN to be broken by Trump, and they just haven't returned since.
It was an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's right. But it's not just them. Like, there's been all kinds of people who have just descended from Trump, and that's what I'm worried about. To answer your question, at the second term, I'm not worried about Hitler. I'm not worried about about dictator for a day. I'm not worried about any of those things. I'm not worried about the mass deportations. I don't think they're going to happen. I think, like a lot of what Trump says, a lot of this stuff is just impractical and is just not going to happen. But what I do think is that the diminution of and the devolution of standards will continue over that second term. And I think what we've learnt is you don't go back. Once they go down, they stay down. And I am concerned about the public discourse in America in 6 years' time if Trump has 4 more years to work on everyone else and the way they react. So that's what I'm concerned about.
And
so
let
the
me
answer
just
to your
throw
question
in
is I'm not looking forward to it.
just one additional wrinkle there, which is that I think people often think that the deleterious effect that he has on the discourse is limited to the right. But of course, it also deranges the left completely and makes the left lose sight of reasonable bread and butter Walden issues and becomes, deranged and, hysterical and loses a quorum of support as well. Yeah, okay, finish that thought because I'm also interested in whether or not you're concerned about his impact on democracy and like creating, partisan political hacks in the public service and swinging the judiciary into being a bunch of stooges.
I'm not so worried about I kind of finished the first point. I'm not so worried about the judiciary because in particular, look, he has appointed some mega hacks, like not a huge number of mega hacks. I think a number of Trump judges are fine, but he's appointed some mega hacks and I'm sure he'll appoint some more mega hacks, but mega hacks at the lowest level of the federal court process don't really bother me that much. There's always appeals and all the rest of it. I'm mostly worried about the Supreme Court. And I actually think I'm not so worried about the Supreme Court. And I'll tell you why. Because I think the most reasonable conservative judges are the youngest conservative judges. I think Amy Coney Barrett is by a mile the most reasonable of those people.
Yes.
I think Brett Kavanaugh is the closest thing they've got to a swinging judge. I think that so if Trump appoints 2 more conservative judges, it'll be to replace Justice Roberts and Justice Alito, who were the 2 mega hacks. So in the worst case scenario, he's going to replace 2 mega hacks with 2 more
and
mega
Thomas
hacks.
as well.
So what I say? Sorry, I meant Thomas. Sorry,
not Roberts. Roberts is young.
Sorry, that's my mistake. Roberts is not a mega hack. Thomas is a mega hack, and Alito's a mega hack.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So they're the two. They're the 2 who would be replaced under another Trump term. So it actually won't change the Supreme Court at all. The swinging judges will still be Amy Coney Barrett and Justice Kavanaugh and Roberts. And look, with the exception of, this might be unpopular with some of your viewers, but in my personal view, as someone who's really into Supreme Court stuff, I actually think most of their rulings have been quite reasonable. I think there have been a couple that aren't reasonable at all. I think that even though I was never a fan of Roe versus Wade as a piece of legal theory, so I didn't mind it being overturned. I thought that the reasoning behind overturning it was very weak. So I thought that was a bad ruling, Dobbs, for that reason. I thought Justice Thomas's guns ruling, Bruin, was terrible. And I thought the immunity hearing just now was the worst of all. But with the exception of those 3, I think a lot of their rulings are just conservative rulings, and they're not ridiculous and insane. They're just conservative. And so I'm not so worried about the courts. I am really worried about the bureaucracy. I think it's well within his power to just take the next 5,000 bureaucrats and make them political hacks. And that will change America for the worst, for markedly the worst. And once again, you can't go back. Once you make them political hacks, you can't unmake them political hacks.
It's very hard to clean it out, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm worried about that.
And so finally, what's your prognostication? What's going to happen over the next couple of months?
If you're asking for me to predict the result, I suppose for the first time we probably can, because I've always said until now we need to wait for the debate. And we need to wait for these sort of moments. We're getting to the point now where we're getting close enough where you can probably make a prediction. I think it's going to be super close. I think it's really going to be a Pennsylvania 20,000 votes job. But so predicting is insane. But just because I don't want to be a spoil sport and I want to give you something, I'll say at this point in time, I'd be predicting Trump. But really? Yes, really. But I honestly, 20,000 votes, so easy.
Why are you predicting Trump?
I think that that with all things being equal, the fundamentals favor Trump. You have an unpopular president with an unliked economy, even though I think actually the economy is objectively not bad. That's not how the American people see it. You have a general vibe of malaise, I think, in America at the moment. People are not enjoying. People want change, and Kamala Harris provided a spark of change for a brief period of time. But I think they're already getting used to her. And I think at the end of the day, in 6 weeks' time, when people are asking, "Am I going to get more change from Kamala Harris or from Donald Trump?" they're more likely to say Donald Trump. The polling already suggests that. And I think it's going to become more so in 6 weeks' time.
I guess I'm just going to be contrarian and take the opposite version.
Sure.
One of it, buy the other one a beer after the election. My suspicion is that the change moniker still redounds to Kamala more than Trump. That people are a bit weary of the old culture wars. Not everybody. A lot. Probably 80% of voters love it. Half of whom are going to vote for Trump and half of whom are going to vote for Kamala. But I think the people in the middle, it's possible that just be like, this is really not a great choice, but he's a bit of a jackass. Why don't we take a punt on the younger woman, give her a shot, see if she can do anything. That's my hunch, but I don't live in rural Pennsylvania.
No, look. I would not. I just want to be very clear. I would not all be surprised if you're right. We are talking about 0.5% of Pennsylvania. That's what we're talking about.
And that in itself is ridiculous when you think about that. In 1984, Ronald Reagan won 49 out of 50 states. It's like, give me those years back. Jazz, great to talk to you. Thank you so much for staying up and speaking with us.
It's a pleasure.